Elite 5 brigades of the Ukrainian armed forces trapped. Russian forces suddenly break through into the Dnipropetrovsk region. Good day, dear friends. As always, we continue to monitor the situation on the front lines daily. The fighting persists, so we will keep analyzing the battlefield dynamics together. Before we begin, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps its growth. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. Now let's open the map. So friends, events are unfolding at an extremely rapid pace. You know the saying, started off well but ended badly? I think you've heard it, but in this case it's the exact opposite. At the beginning of February, Russian forces slowed their advance. The pace was decreasing day by day. But a few days ago, on February 18th, everything changed dramatically. The Ukrainian defense ultimately collapsed on two fronts. The first sector is west of Kurakov, and the second is northwest of Velika Novosilka. Yesterday we analyzed this area, but now there are significant updates. First, regarding Ulakli. Remember how I told you that Ukrainian forces were encircled there? Well, they failed to break out. The Ukrainian armed forces even sent a unit to break the siege, but that unit was destroyed, as confirmed by Ukrainian military analysts themselves. They also reported that all those who were in Ulakli are now either killed or taken prisoner. Yesterday, a video surfaced showing Russian flags in Ulakli, leaving no doubt that the Russian army controls the village. The battle lasted only 4 days, despite the area being well fortified. Now, the main focus has shifted to Constantinople, where an intense battle is raging. Both Ukrainian and Russian forces are throwing in their reserves. The situation is brutal. Footage from the front lines shows casualties, wounded soldiers, screams, and chaos. Obviously, I can't show that here. The attacks are coming from 3 directions, north, east, and south, and soon it will all be over. When the north, east, and south are under Russian control, it becomes impossible to hold the line. Russian forces are also advancing from Andriivka, attempting to cross the river and pushing from Ulakli. Now that the village is under full Russian control, this entire 2x3 kilometer section is also secured. Meanwhile, pressure is mounting from the south as well. Additionally, yesterday, Russian troops made a 2-kilometer push from the south and reached the southern outskirts of Rozliv, a heavily fortified area. If it falls, Russian forces will be able to encircle the Ukrainian garrison in Constantinople. Given the AFU's current reserves, only an incomplete battalion remains in the village. For one village, that's a significant force. However, if Rozliv falls, the surrounding territory, 12 square kilometers, will be encircled. But it's not just about the number of encircled Ukrainian soldiers. The real issue is that the entire offensive power of the Russian grouping will then shift to the last 2 fortified positions in the area, Bohatyr and Alexeyevka. Beyond them lies open terrain with no defensive structures for 15 kilometers, all the way to Novopavlivka. Nothing will stop Russian forces from advancing. That's why Ukrainian analysts are in complete shock and rage at how fast their defenses are crumbling, despite the fortified positions. And it makes sense. Since February 18th, Russia has taken control of 100 square kilometers. When has that ever happened? I personally don't recall such a rapid advance. And it's not just the southern sector. There are also significant movements elsewhere, including on the eastern flank of Pokrovsk. As you can see on the map, this entire area has fallen under Russian control. Despite Ukrainian denials, they were eventually forced to admit that Zelenopol is now under Russian control. From there, Russian attacks are advancing in 2 directions. Toward Tarasivka, where Ukrainian forces have already been pushed out of the southern part, and toward Alexandropol. Why these moves? As I explained before, the goal is to encircle a large Ukrainian grouping and seize a major section of territory, over 200 square kilometers in total. At the same time, to be fair, we must acknowledge that the Ukrainian armed forces had one success in this sector. For example, they managed to push Russian troops from this highway interchange. It had been under Russian control since early January, but the AFU gathered a strike force, launched a counterattack, and ultimately forced Russian troops to abandon the interchange. Situation between the Salty and Volkhya rivers as of February 22nd. After a brief operational pause, active combat operations have resumed in the areas of Uspenivka, Novoalexandrivka, Preobrazhenka, and Zaporizhzhia. Particularly intense battles are taking place between Uspanivka and Novoalexandrivka, where Russian forces are working to stabilize the left flank of their offensive near Udakne. If possible, they aim to assist in capturing the settlement and advancing to the administrative border of the Dnipropetrovsk region. In the southern sector, between Andriivka and Zaporizhzhia, Russian troops, building on their success near the Volchya River, are attempting to straighten the front line and create conditions for further advancement. Moving on. In the Toretsk area, nothing significant is happening for now. However, there has been progress near Chasiv Yar, though not in the town itself, but further north, in the Kramatorsk direction. Take a look at Hrihorivka village. In just one day of fighting, the AFU were completely pushed out, and the village is now under full and undisputed Russian control. A video with Russian flags has already surfaced, and more importantly, from this village, Russian forces have begun advancing toward the Siversky Donets-Donbass Canal. This is part of the operation aimed at capturing Kramatorsk. The first step is clearing the territory in front of the canal. Recently, Orekovo-Vasilivka was taken, and now Hrihorivka. Once the entire area in front of the canal is secured, the next phase will involve crossing it and continuing the offensive toward Kramatorsk, with artillery support from Chasiv Yar. Since Chasiv Yar is the highest point in the area, it provides a strong position for supporting advancing troops moving across lower terrain. There has also been progress in the Siversk direction, particularly in Bilohorivka. Yesterday, Russian forces secured the northern outskirts, about 1 square kilometer of territory. While the exact size of the area isn't the key factor, what matters is that the AFU now controls only a small section on the western edge of the village. This can be considered a major success, given that the front line here had remained stagnant for months without moving even a meter. Pokrovsky direction as of February 22nd. Battles for Lysivka and regional situation. Russian forces have driven Ukrainian units out of most of Lysivka, cutting off their previous gains. Moreover, they have secured new territories that were previously outside Russian control. However, the situation remains tense. The Ukrainian side is preparing for a potential breakthrough, as indicated by increased air activity and the use of glide bombs against Russian positions. There is also a significant concentration of Ukrainian forces inside the Pokrovsky-Mirnohrad agglomeration, posing a threat of an attack towards Selidov or further west. On the northern section of the Pokrovsky Arc, Russian units, despite some local gains, have largely shifted to defensive operations in anticipation of a potential Ukrainian counterattack. Fighting continues near Udakne and Kotlin, though the intensity has decreased. Progress remains limited, but Russian forces maintain offensive actions. Kursk direction as of February 22nd. Combat developments. Russian troops continue their offensive along the flanks of the Ukrainian-held Sudzha salient. Fighting is ongoing inside Lebedivka and south of Sverdlivka, with advances toward Novenka. Unconfirmed reports suggest that Russian forces may have already entered Novenka. The 51st Regiment of the 106th Airborne Division is reportedly operating in the Lebedivka area, while the 56th Air Assault Regiment of the 7th Airborne Assault Division is advancing toward Novenka. Novenka is a small settlement, so its capture would effectively establish control over the area. Russian aviation is actively engaged in the region, highlighting the serious intent of the advancing forces. In response, Ukraine is deploying reserves and mounting a strong defense, holding key positions. The loss of Novenka, and even more so, Basivka, would place the main Ukrainian supply route in the Sudzha area under Russian fire control. Additionally, Russian units are attacking on the western bank of the Syl River, west of Kurilivka. Despite Ukrainian resistance, some progress has been noted. Kharkiv region situation. In the Dvorishna area, movement has slowed down for now. However, further north, Russian advances are gaining momentum. Even Ukrainian sources confirm that they have lost control of the villages of Topoli and Stroivka. If you look at the map, you'll see that a significant portion of territory is now under Russian control, about 13 square kilometers. The objective here is clear: to merge this foothold with the Dvorishna foothold and establish not just an isolated position, but an actual front line spanning 35 kilometers. Currently, the distance between these two footholds is 8 kilometers. The main obstacle to linking them is the village of Kamenka. A direct assault on Kamenka would be costly due to the elevated terrain under Ukrainian control, so flanking maneuvers are being used instead. For example, from Dvorishna, Russian forces are advancing from Fiholivka toward Kolodiazne, which will then connect with positions in Stroivka. That concludes today's Frontline update. Wishing you a good weekend, take care and see you soon.